Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. This is Texas A&M Kingsville. This is our 53rd annual Jazz Festival. We're calling it 53rd version 2.0 since last year's festival never really happened. These are the times we're in, so we're making the best of it, and we're bringing our clinic to you today virtually. So for years and years now, we've always brought some of the greatest jazz musicians down here to South Texas to perform with our students and for our community. And one of the highlights is always the clinic by the guest artists. And this year we're super proud to have and present Marshall Gilks. Marshall is one of the world's greatest jazz trombonists. He has played with the Christian McBride Big Band, Wynton Marsalis Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, Maria Schneider Band, WDR Big Band in Cologne. And he also has many, many albums to his credit that he's done that with his small groups that he's put together. Marshall is also a great composer, arranger, and we'll invite all you guys back tonight at 7 o'clock for our big band concert. We have jazz bands 3, 2, 1, and then we'll have Marshall come out and play some of his original tunes with Jazz Band 1. So we hope you can make that as well. But without any further ado, we're really happy to present Marshall Gilks. As I said, he's a great educator. He's been spending the last couple of days with our students. They've learned so much. We've had such a good time with him. So we hope you enjoy his clinic. So take it away, Marshall.
Thank you very much. I started off. That's a composition by one of the most famous figures in the history of jazz, Charlie Parker, great alto saxophonist and composer, and I guess one of the people that we think of as the kind of the innovators of the bebop era in jazz. That's a tune I always loved playing. I love the harmony and the progression. But I guess today I'll start off a little bit just talking about kind of my upbringing and how I got into music, how I got into jazz. I grew up in a musical family. My father was a conductor, was actually originally a trombone player. So he had studied trombone with a famous teacher named Emery Remington at the Eastman School of Music back in the 1960s. And by the time I think by the time I was born, maybe he had probably primarily stopped playing and gotten into conducting. And so my father had played trombone and euphonium in the Air Force Band in Washington, D.C. He played euphonium in the ceremonial brass, it's called, and then also in the concert band there. And then he became a conductor in the military, in the Air Force band system. So I was born in Washington, D.C. In the Washington, D.C. area. I was actually born in Maryland, but I never lived in Maryland. It's kind of a funny thing as a military kid, you know. It's funny, I one time, I was playing for a while. So I don't know where it came from exactly, but there was a bio of mine going around that said Camp Springs, Maryland native, and I've never lived in Camp Springs in my life, but that's right next to where Andrews Air Force Base is at the time. So I think my birth certificate maybe said that. But so my family, we moved around to different bands in the Air Force a lot. So as a kid, I was born in Washington, D.C., then moved to New Hampshire, then to New Jersey, Alabama for a year, then to Illinois, and then to Colorado. And I started playing, I guess, when I lived in Illinois. So I started playing trombone in the 5th grade. I had started piano a couple of years before that. But so my father was a conductor, and then my mother was a voice teacher. So my mom was always, and also sang in church and in professional choirs. And sometimes did recitals and things like that. So my house was definitely full of music. And my brother, when he was younger, he was actually a boy soprano. He was in a group called the American Boy Choir. And so he was, at a very young age, he was at a boarding school in New Jersey. And it's very, very, it's really fun. There's a video around of him. They used to have these Christmas specials, and there's a Christmas special with the American Boy Choir with Mr. T. If you remember from the A-Team, and but something there's my brother, singing with his little candle and Mr. T. But then my brother became he was a really great classical pianist and also played bass, in jazz stuff. So it was a very, I guess, musical household. And but a lot of my first memories of checking out music were going to hear my dad's concerts, the concert band concerts, or the jazz band concerts. So I started playing. I guess my dad had an old Conn 88H trombone that was his in the closet at home, and I guess I found it one day. Maybe put a couple dents in it. But he started showing me a couple little things. So when I could play a few little notes and stuff. So in 5th grade, when they were handing out instruments, like they say, here, try this, and I could play something. Okay, well, you're stuck with this now, So that's how I ended up on the trombone. And at the beginning, I liked playing, but I wasn't super serious about it. And then around, I think, right before 7th grade, maybe my parents sent me to we lived in Illinois at the time. They sent me to this camp called Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp, which is I think it's near Muskegon, Michigan. And it was a 2-week music camp. That kind of changed, I think, got me a lot more serious about music. And I went back there a couple more summers. And so right around that time, though, 8th grade, we moved to Colorado. And at that band, my dad was conductor of the Air Force Academy band there. And there was a jazz ensemble that was part of that group. They were called the Falconaires. And so I started playing classical, and I still play classical stuff to this day. I work on that almost every day, and that's a big part of kind of my upbringing as a brass player and as a musician. I love it, and I guess I primarily make a living traveling, playing in the jazz world, but I still do a good bit of classical stuff. And I'd like to think of, I like the idea of trying to be just as complete a musician as possible, rather than saying, oh, I only play jazz, or I only play rock music, or I only play classical. I like to try to work on everything, and just try to play good music, hopefully. I guess that's kind of, I should maybe credit that's kind of stealing from Duke Ellington a little bit. He has a famous phrase. He said, there's two kinds of music, good music and bad music, So then my dad was stationed there at the Air Force Academy, and I was studying with some guys for classical trombone, and then through that big band there, the Falconaires, I kind of started to really get curious about jazz, and so I started studying first with a trumpet player from the band, a guy named Mark Israel, and he started teaching me just really just theory stuff, like basic things to try to start understanding. Okay, if you see a C with a triangle, that means this: C, E, G, B, C major 7 chord. If you see a C-7, that means C, E flat, G, B flat. And he was teaching me this, theory and kind of also. He got me started playing piano at a young age, jazz piano. So he gave me these little finger patterns to play the chords at the piano to start practicing to understand that. And I guess I should say before that, I think probably my first experience improvising was just learning in school, which I'm sure a lot of you have, just learning like a blues scale, and trying to improvise with that. And it's funny because I mean, I still to this day use tons of just that, the very first thing I ever learned as an improviser, And it's interesting though, I think in some ways it would be almost a little bit better if when we teach blues scale, when you learn at a young age, if you maybe learn a little bit of the context, and so almost kind of learn and practice some kind of cliche ideas, if you know what I mean, that go along with that scale. So I'll give you the demonstration. If I was going to play an F blues with just like an F blues scale, so that scale, in case you don't any of you don't know it at home, it's just okay. So I'll get 1, 2, 1. So that's just notes from that blues scale, but if you heard me playing little ideas like how many times have you heard that in music when people were soloing and improvising? So I think to try to think of it that way in terms of the shapes and those certain blue notes that we consider, the flat 3 there and the to try to, I think that's the important thing to understand about that scale when you use it and learn it, is that it's just kind of that sound is the most important part of it. So if you guys aren't already doing that, I think that's a great starting point for everybody, is just to learn, B flat blues or an F blues in that case. And like I said, it's just like the F, what I was just playing there was only F, A flat, B, C, E flat, and F. Those notes. And if you guys Google F blues scale, you can get those notes. And what I did a lot when I was younger was play a lot with Jamie Aebersold play-alongs. Nowadays, you can also just go on YouTube and type in. There's one site I like is called Learn Jazz Standards, and you can just type in F blues. Put your headphones on or turn your speakers on and just start jamming, just with that. And that's how I started, the same way as all of you guys. But so around that time, I started, getting more and more serious about stuff, and was learning the theory and stuff and practicing. And I had a pile of these Jamie Aebersold records, and I would put them on my parents' stereo in the living room, and just every day after school play through the books of tunes and just try to get better, try to understand better. I guess as time went on, as I got a little older, probably around my senior year of high school, I was really lucky. I got the opportunity to spend my last year of high school at the Interlochen Arts Academy, which is it's a boarding music school in Michigan. So I left Colorado after my junior year of high school, and it's kind of like a conservatory. It was wake up in the morning at 8 o'clock, or 6:30 or 7, go have breakfast, and then go to 8 o'clock concert band rehearsal for 2 hours. I felt really lucky, and I kind of felt cool at the same time too, because if you got into the jazz combo, 2 days a week you got to get out of concert band early and go rehearse with the combo. So I always felt like, sorry guys, I gotta go. You know? I remember that, like, but that was, for me, was a really life-changing experience, you know, because I just, you know, got to, all of a sudden, you know, I was into music, but I was also really into skiing in Colorado. I loved to ski. My friends, every weekend, we would just like get in the car and drive in the mountains. And but all of a sudden, I was surrounded by all these other kids who were really into jazz too, and introducing me to things that I hadn't heard before. And so I would say one thing I started doing, which I think is a really important thing for jazz musicians or for people who want to improvise, I started transcribing. And I think I think a really great starting point is, you know, kind of transcribing jazz masters, you know, the trombone people like J.J. Johnson, or Slide Hampton, you know, Curtis Fuller. Saxophone, obviously, people like Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, you know, Hank Mobley. I transcribed Hank Mobley solos. They lay well on the trombone. Trumpet players, you know, Clifford Brown, Miles Davis. I mean, there's tons. I'm leaving out hundreds right now, so I hope I'm, you know, not offending anybody. but you know, just these are in transcribing. But I guess even before that, one of the most important things is just to listen to jazz. You know, I can't tell you how many times people come to me and say, "Oh, I want to learn how to improvise." I said, "Well, what do you listen to? Do you listen to any jazz?" "Well, no." "Okay, well, that might be a good starting point, you know." But to listen to things, and then when you find something you like, man, sit down and try to learn it, transcribe it, make it your own, you know. And you know, what I'm constantly trying to do as an improviser and as a musician in general, but especially as an improviser, is make the connection between my ear and my instrument faster. You know, yesterday I was using the analogy of like broadband, you know, internet speed. Like, you know, I used to be a little more dial-up, and I'm starting to get more and more broadband, and I want to really get it as fiber optic as possible, the connection. But meaning just like a stream of consciousness, play what I hear. But there's a ton of practice that goes into that, you know, and a lot of studying. But going forward, I'll keep on trying to follow the timeline here and not get too sidetracked. But so after Interlochen, I went back to Colorado for a year, and I went to the University of Northern Colorado for a year. I had a great trombone teacher there, a guy named Buddy Baker, who's also Paul studied with. And he was just a great, like, fundamental trombone teacher. So I was working on lots of fundamentals. I'll tell you, I'm not trying to brag, but at that point I really got serious about practicing, and I used to practice, you know, 8 to 10 hours a day sometimes. And one thing I always tell my students now, or I always say in master classes, I feel really lucky at that time that's the most I've ever practiced in my life. And I also say I love to practice. Like, if I don't practice and I have a performance, I don't feel comfortable. I'm almost superstitious about it, you know. But I really love to practice. I feel really lucky, though, that during that time, all the technology we have today, which is also incredible, that's how we're communicating today, but it didn't exist. And so I used to leave my dorm room at 7:30 in the morning, 8 o'clock, and I would come back maybe 10 at night from the practice rooms, or 11. You know, I'd go to classes in between, and come back at the end of the day. But there was maybe one day a week there might be a message on the answering machine from my mom, you know, but you know, this idea of, this constant distraction that a lot of us have nowadays didn't exist, and I feel really lucky about that. And even at home now, I try whenever possible. Like my practice room is down in my basement, so I try to leave my phone or stuff upstairs, just so I'm not tempted to check the score or, But if any of you can do that, I think that's really, some of you maybe are a lot more disciplined than I am, but I'm very easily distracted. So, so I would kind of, when I say practicing that much, I wasn't playing trombone all day. I would play trombone an hour, then I would sit at the piano, and I was trying to get better at piano at the time, so I was practicing little classical etudes and stuff, or trying to learn my voicings, 2-5-1s, harmony, things like that, studying. I would then play another hour, work on my lesson materials that week, and then spend an hour maybe transcribing. I'd sit at the piano and transcribe, things like that. But anyway, I knew I wanted to kind of get to the New York area eventually. So I left that school after a year, and I went to a school called William Patterson, which is right outside New York City. And I stayed there for a year, and it was a great opportunity. It was very different from the other schools I had been, like Interlochen or Northern Colorado, because it was a small group focus. Really the focus of the school was improvisation. At Northern Colorado, I would say, maybe still today, I don't know. I'm not that familiar with it now, but it's big. Yeah, it's a big band focus, which is also. I'm really glad that I had that exposure as well. That experience. Maybe because that later in my career became very important to have had that kind of education. But at William Patterson, it was like, okay, we're constantly trying to learn tunes. And my juries there would be like, the director of the school was Rufus Reed, the great bassist. And the jury would be, you play with Rufus Reed and two other, professional rhythm section players from New York City, and you'd walk in with a list of, these are my 10 tunes, and they could call any 2 or 3 tunes from that, and you can't bring in music. Everything has to be memorized, So that, that kind of small group focus there, and a lot of great soloists there. The interesting thing was that I remember thinking, wow, these soloists are incredible. Then I sat in the big band there, and I thought, oh, hey, okay, you guys don't know what -1 means or -2 or these things. Like nobody's. It's interesting how. It's funny. I think. Yeah. Anyway, so I was really glad to have that experience of how to, pay attention, really close attention to detail. Like to cutoffs and playing with other people and how to play it as a section together. But then playing with people who guys who are, 19, 20 years old and know 150 tunes already by memory, that was okay. It's another thing. So I was really glad to spend that year there, but at the time it wasn't really the right fit for me. So I decided, and I'm not telling anybody to do this, but at the time I decided, you know what, I'm gonna step back a little bit. I'm gonna move into New York City, and I'm just gonna find my way for a little bit. So first I went back to Colorado and hung out for a minute, and then the phone rang, or somebody recommended me. Maybe I think a friend from William Patterson recommended me. So I was about 19 at the time, and a guy from Carnival Cruise Lines called me. Yeah, they needed captain. I was like, yes, I always wanted to drive a ship. Not in the Suez Canal, but sorry, bad timing. So no, sorry. No, they called me. Hey, you're recommended. We need somebody to go play in the band on the Carnival Tropical was the boat. So I was like 19. I was working in a restaurant meantime as a waiter, and I was like, waiter, playing a band on a cruise ship. So I waited tables about another 6 years. And no, just kidding. No, but I went. It was like a 3-month contract, and playing in a band, and playing everything. We had to play like a production show, kind of a Broadway show. But then we had to play dance sets for people, like playing standards, and I got to improvise and stuff like that, and play with some other professional people, and start seeing parts of the world I'd never been to. That ship was in the Caribbean. We'd go every week to. We'd go like 4-day cruise and then 3-day cruise. We'd go to like Key West, Florida, and then to Cozumel, Mexico, Grand Cayman Islands, and going every week. I got to know these places really well. But anyway, so I did that for 3 months, and then I moved into the city with a friend of mine who had gone to Interlochen, a drummer friend of mine, and when I got to the city, it was interesting. Like I didn't think, I always had this picture of New York that just like, oh, okay, I'm not ready. I don't know when I'm going to be ready to play. But so I just immediately, the first thing I did, also because I had saved up all that money from working on a cruise ship, that was gone in about a week, or two in New York City. So I worked as a waiter, I was at a little cafe that years later I would start playing trio gigs at, because and the owner used to always say, oh, if you come to beg for your job back. But I would work, work there, I would practice during the days or whatever. And then eventually it was interesting. At the very first, somebody that I knew through going to school in New Jersey recommended me for a salsa band rehearsal in Brooklyn. And I went there, and a lot of things, maybe even standing here today, I might be able to trace back to that very first rehearsal. And so it was just like a salsa band in Brooklyn, and I did that, and then I had a gig with that, but it was funny. If you meet one person and you do a good job, then they're going to tell somebody else, or they're going to call you to do something else, and it's just like a chain effect. And so that's like one of the biggest pieces of advice I always give my students. They say, what can you say about, how can you start doing what you're doing? I said, say yes. Just say yes. You never know. When I was a kid, I didn't listen to salsa music, or, I somehow all of a sudden at a young age, I ended up, that was how I was making my living. I was playing 5 or 6 nights a week, sometimes traveling around the Northeast, or even flying places I remember going to Spain with Eddie Santiago, who's a very well-known salsa singer, and playing in Copacabana, Latin Quarter in New York, all these, which was great as a brass player. And that's where I go back to like having that big band education a little bit, and foundation, also brass fundamentals, So that's when I first moved to New York, how I started making my living was doing that, and then kind of eventually started doing more and more jazz stuff, and after and then I will say after I was waiting tables for a while. Then I got another opportunity to go on a cruise ship again, but I had never been to Europe in my life. And this cruise ship at the time, it was called the Grand Princess, and it was the biggest cruise ship in the world. They had 2 bands on the ship, two bands, yeah. There was like 3,000 passengers or something like that. Anyway, so I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Like, I'm gonna go do that. So I think that's when I was 20 years old, and I remember I flew to Florida, got on the boat, and then we crossed the Atlantic Ocean. We stopped in the Azores, which are islands that are part of Portugal. We stopped there, and then our first stop in Europe was Lisbon, Portugal. So the first time I ever went to Europe was on a boat, actually, which was kind of cool, But I did that for about 4 months, and what we did is we went back and forth in the Mediterranean every day. Started in Barcelona, and then we'd go to Monte Carlo, and then we'd go to Livorno, Italy, which is kind of near Pisa, and then we'd go to Naples, Italy, and then we would go through in between the boot, called the Straits of Messina, in between the boot and Sicily, go through there, and then up the Adriatic to Venice, Italy, and we'd spend the night there. We'd stay overnight, and it was like amazing getting to walk around because of music, all because of playing, practicing and playing. And then we would go to Greece the next day. And you never had to unpack or pack, because you just get off the ship and get back on, and then we would end up in Istanbul, and then the passengers would get off and new passengers would get on, and we'd go back the other way. But it was, that was a great time, because I was playing, and you had to play every day, but also I had tons of time to practice. If you have a day at sea, there's nothing to do. So sometimes I would go down to the rope deck of the ship and practice, where all the big ropes were, where they tie the ships up and stuff. Or sometimes there was like an officer's lounge, which, just go in there. And I remember practicing. I think I tried to transcribe Chick Corea, his solo on Matrix. I can't remember which solo, but anyway, I remember practicing even certain things there. But anyway, so then after that, back to New York, and kind of found my way into the scene of playing and started doing all kinds of things, like I playing jazz gigs, obviously, but then also to make a living, I did everything from playing Broadway shows. I went on a tour of a Broadway show for a year. It was called Swing. And we would spend 1 or 2 weeks in each city, primarily in the United States, and then we went to Japan for about 6 weeks at the end of that. But even because of playing that show, I met a saxophone player who came out on that show to sub for a week, and then he recommended me for something else, how I met the bass trombone player from Maria Schneider's band, and probably how I got introduced to her. It's like kind of always a chain effect. But I did that show and then came back to New York and just do everything from playing recording sessions, and then always still trying to work on my own music. Maybe recording some albums over that time, and then played with a lot of different groups over the years, and then I should say, I guess during that time I decided I was going to go back and finish school. So I went to the Juilliard School and I finished my undergraduate degree, my bachelor's, and then I stayed and did a program there which was called Artist Diploma. It's sort of like a master's, but it's a little different. And so I got to spend four years at the Juilliard School. And then not too long after that, I got an opportunity to audition for the WDR Big Band, which is it's a full-time jazz orchestra in Germany. That's part of one of the, I guess it's the largest TV and radio network in Germany. So I ended up winning the audition, and I moved to Germany for 4 years, and I was part of that orchestra. And it's kind of like if you could think of I don't know, here in Texas, maybe the Houston Symphony, or if you can think of like the Chicago Symphony or these big orchestras we have, but it's a big band, That's kind of what that job was. And we primarily worked in a recording studio, so every day we were either recording or rehearsing. We did some concerts as well. But that's where, once again, that section playing, background and education was really important, because our job there sometimes was, first or second time through to nail it, let's look this down. Okay, we're going to record it now. And there was a red light in the studio, so when the red light came on, you tried your best not to miss, And so I did that for 4 years, but then after 4 years, I decided to come back to the States and kind of start, maybe with the idea of pursuing more of my own projects and writing. And I also started teaching during that time. I was a professor at Berklee College of Music for about 4 years. Now I teach at Manhattan School of Music and perform with lots of different groups and write a lot. And so that's kind of my background. Anybody have any questions yet from the chat?
Nothing in the chat.
Nothing in the chat, okay. Any questions here from anybody? Yes.
You mentioned like you just started like towards the later end of your the story you told. You mentioned that you started going into your writings. Did you have any inspirations like for you creating the writings, like your own originals? Like who inspired you or anything for you?
Oh yeah. Well, I would say my very first composition I think I ever wrote was at Interlaken, and I just tried to do it, there was a piano player student there. His name's Jim Harold. I don't know where he is now. I haven't kept in touch, but I remember he was really, he understood harmony already at a very young age really well, and he kind of helped me. He said, "Oh, this is what you're hearing here. You want minor 2-5-1 here," kinds of things, So that's the very first stuff I wrote. Then I remember that second year of school, William Patterson. My first year, maybe I was writing a bit too, but I don't really remember. But I remember at the second year, at that time, I started listening to a group, a Paul Motion trio, at the time, and I really liked that openness of playing. So I tried to write some tunes like that, I guess at that time I had certain sounds I liked. I remember then I really liked, kind of. Pretty extensions, like sharp 11 kind of sound. major chords. And so a lot of those tunes were kind of like that and open. And I started playing with some guys there as a trio, which like the Paul Motion trio, there was no bass. It was just guitar, a drummer, and myself, you know. But then as time went on, I think, you know, certainly I think compositionally I was, influenced a lot by working a lot in the Latin music community. You know, there's some of my charts where, I mean, I listen to a lot of Cuban music, timba, and like certain bands. There's one of my favorite bands called Habana de Primera, and like there's some charts of mine where there's like little riffs where there's definitely some of that influence of that, you know. Even maybe in puddle jumping, I guess there's some of that, you know. But then, yeah, so many influences, you know. Like I was saying yesterday in the master class here with the college students, I was kind of saying that I think Maria Schneider was definitely a huge influence on me, and playing with her now too. That's a huge, you know, to sit in there. And it's interesting that a lot of people always say trombonists. There's so many trombonists who compose for big band. And some people have this, some friends might have this theory, it's because you sit right in the middle of everything. So you hear all the extensions behind you, you're given the foundation for everything, and so you're in a position to kind of grasp everything that's going on. When I was in college, if you told me I was gonna write two big band records worth of music, well, more than that now, you know, I would have said no way. I mean, because it just seemed like such a daunting task, you know, to try to put all these notes, organize all these notes on paper. But I kind of just started doing it, and now it doesn't feel that way. It's like, okay, I'm gonna write a chart, you know. You just need some time, and you have to just do it, and you learn. It's kind of trial and error, just like anything, you know. But certainly, you know, when I was in Germany, it was really kind of a cool experience because every week you had a different arranger there. Like you know, one week could be Vince Mendoza, great, like one of my favorite arrangers, you know. He could be there one week, and the next week, Michael Abeni, who was the conductor then, was incredible writer, very prolific. Like, you know, every concert we were doing, he wrote 12 charts or something like that. It's incredible. Like just pumping them out, and you know, people like that. Or I remember a great Belgian writer came there. I wasn't familiar with him. It's Bert Joris. Great charts, you know. You know, now I also play in the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra, so we play a lot of Jim McNeely's music. I've always loved that, you know, in terms of big band writing. And obviously we play all the Thad Jones stuff and the classic Bob Brookmeyer charts. I mean, those are a lot of my favorite writers. But when you sit there all the time, you know, maybe via osmosis, you kind of you start to absorb some of those things, you know, if you're playing music with people every week, every day, you know, so sometimes it's hard, you know, maybe it's hard to know exactly what the influences are. Did you mean like musical influences, or did you mean like, you know, more like life experiences or something like that?
Oh, that could be included too. I was talking about the music influences, but life, and I'd be also to know too.
Yeah, I mean, I primarily write. I primarily just sit down and write, and maybe there is some purpose behind it, but oftentimes I'm not really thinking that. There have been some times where I've written commissions, and people said, we want you to write a piece about this, I have written a few tunes about my kids, you know, for my kids, and one for my wife, things like that. I actually wrote a piece for my mom too, you know. My mom's middle name is Louise, so the piece is called Mary Louise. And I had this memory from my mom teaching voice lessons as a kid. They used to always go, Z, 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 this vocal exercise. And so the tune goes like, that as an introduction, like the vocal exercise, you know. But you know, it's for my mom, and then it goes into a melody, you know. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure, you know. Last night we played a tune of my Lost Words, and that title comes from. Sometimes I feel like I can find express myself better harmonically or through melodies than, like sometimes speaking, I feel like I'm at a loss for words to say exactly what I'm thinking or meaning. So, so I'm sure there's probably more influences behind my tunes than I really am aware of. Yeah. But
Yeah, we've got some questions coming into the chat. So Musical Bone asked, what are the keys of a great improvised solo?
what are the keys?
That's how they,
Like C, B flat, A flat. You got to hit G flat too is a good one. I like G flat. No,
What does it mean figuratively, keys?
well,
More figurative.
that's a great question. So in case anybody didn't hear, what are the main elements of a great improvised solo? Wow. I can tell you what I look for. So first of all, I guess the first step is as an improviser and also listening to improvisers, I want to hear a clear and concise knowledge of the harmony in the tune. So meaning that that they're clearly conveying the harmonies in their solo. But that's before we even get to like the musical expressiveness, the expression. Now the next thing. One thing I love in solos is I just love a shape to them. And one thing that I think is very hard when you're starting out in improvising and you're getting all this information thrown at you, you have to play this scale and you have to hit this note, it's hard to think about the big picture musically, right? And so I will say, I think to get to the point where you can start, to keep thinking about getting a great soloist, you basically have to do all this study to kind of try to liberate yourself as a musician, as an improviser. But I mean, but you can also do that at a simpler level, though. So I guess what I'm saying is I love a shape in this, and I love sometimes thinking about improvising over a solo similar to the way a composer writes. So Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, right? Ba 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 ba. Nobody's home. You guys remember those? They used to be an answering machine. No, sorry. Yeah. Thanks for laughing anyway. You probably shouldn't have laughed too. Yeah. Yeah. People at home just went click. No. But he keeps on taking that little motif and developing it. That's how composers think, right? And I try to do that as much as possible, I would say, when I'm improvising. So I would say if I'm not soloing first on a tune or in a group, oftentimes something that the last soloist played or some theme that they played in their melody, I oftentimes will use as a basis of my solo. So let's say the guy finishes so okay, I'll go back to confirmation now, and I'm gonna play maybe one. So now's my turn. So I mean, I kind of kept on playing that little idea. I mean, I was kind of overdoing it now. If I was soloing live, I probably wouldn't do like that much. But that's kind of the idea of what I mean, developing something in your solo. Now, maybe what I'll really quickly show you, just so you know what's going through my head as I was just doing that. So I go do-dee-do-dee-dup. That's an F major chord. Then it's going do-da-do-dee-dup. That's an E. I made it half diminished. It's technically a minor chord, but do-dee-do-dee-dip, and then bo-dee-do-dee, that's D minor chord. So all those chords are already going in my head because I spent the time at the piano. So it's in my head as I was just soloing. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. 24, 25 years ago or something like that. But and studied it for a really long time. Now confirmation is just, practicing it so much like that harmony. So I guess that was the first part of the soloing. I want to listen for, like, at a certain level of player, like a professional. I want to hear that they understand that and they convey that in their solos. If a player's playing and they're playing this chord, the first chord of the tune. I'm not going to say you can't do that, but contextually speaking, like it's the flat two of the chord. You know what I mean? So that's so I guess that's some of the things. Other thing. I mean, that's a hard question. So I'm gonna I feel like there's so many things. Interaction. I'm constantly. I want to play in groups, and I want to. When I think about musicians, I want to play within my own band. I want people that listen to one another, and we improvise. We're like we're composing together. We're improvising, but we're really thinking as composers together. And if I play something, they might react a certain way. And playing with people that I musically trust. So we were talking about. I was talking about with the small group here last in the combo, just about taking chances. But to take chances, you have to trust one another to a certain degree. I think especially for younger players, the idea of making sure you leave some space, that's always very important. It's very hard to do when you have so much information you're trying to do at the same time, right? Like, I'm trying to play these correct notes and everything, I think, I'm not sure if I could make a list of the exact elements that are, but that's at least what I listen for in a solo,
Another question is, what have you done practice-wise to make it easier for you to play what you hear in your head and transfer it to the horn?
That's a great question. Yeah. So I think one of the first things you can do is just take simple melodies. Depending on what your level is, but it could be Happy Birthday. Sit down and just trying to play Happy Birthday. Okay, in B flat. Okay, fine. Let's go to B. So forth, like things like that. It can be a melody you like. My kids love Daniel Tiger. Okay, we'll do an F now. So I think first starting just with melodies. Now those were like tunes. Now let's do it with a jazz melody. One that I have students do a lot because I think it has a few tricky things on Green Dolphin Street. Usually people play it C and F. So that's in C. Let's play it in E flat. Well, everybody already does that. So let's do a trickier key. F sharp. Take it easy. Let's not. No. Just kidding. No, that's fine. F sharp. So yeah. So in my head, I know the melody goes 5-1. That's how it starts, right? That right there, this right here, always used to throw me off. So I would give myself tricks if I couldn't hear it. I'd say, okay, I'm going to go down to the root of the key we're in and play a minor scale. So. So, that's not the hardest melody to do it with, but things like that is a great step. Another thing I would do is if I heard a solo that I liked, if I transcribed the solo, I really liked that this guy played. So that's a 2/5 in F major. He plays the sharp 9, flat 9. Okay, I like that idea. I would take the idea and take it around the cycle of fourths, or you can do it chromatically. Cycle of fourths means like going like this, like from key to key going. That's the direction. That's what people call it. If you want to know more about that at home, this is another thing you could Google and read about it. But so I did it in F, right? So now I'll go to B flat. Now to F, or to E flat. So doing that in different keys to try to, to get it in my ear, so I hear it, and hear those ideas, and so I did a lot of that over the. I do a lot of practicing at home of just playing standards in different keys, and trying to even now at this point transfer. That's kind of advanced stuff, but how I got there though was just what I said, like play, start to try to play tunes by ear rather than by, I'm always kind of in awe of. Yesterday somebody was mentioning like bluegrass musicians or, but like. There's a lot of improvised music in the world that people it's just second nature, and it's so easy for them. And I think that's the kind of goal I want to get to. Obviously, in the jazz world, sometimes the harmonies are definitely more complex, so it can take. But I love the naturalness that a lot of people have. And sometimes the way we grow up, if we come from a classical tradition here, we're so focused on playing the notes on the page exactly, and we forget about the connection of our ear and so. That's one part of it. Also, I think singing things, things like that, just trying to play, just melodies, trying to do it, and not being afraid, like, if you miss a note, that's fine, I thought I was going to miss a note in Green Dolphin Street in G flat, but luckily because of these little tricks I've taught myself, and we pre-planned that. I gave her $20, but no, I was kidding. No. But those are, things like that. Practicing all your scales, but like I was talking yesterday, I showed people how I practice my scales. I practice my C major scale, Practice in all its intervals. Thirds. Fourths. Fifths. Sixths. Sevenths. If you do that every day with all your scales, you start to really hear things a lot more. So, that's about the best way I could answer that. But I've done a lot of that because I really felt when I was younger that my ears were behind my technique on my instrument, and so I still do a lot of things just trying to hear things better. And sometimes I hear certain players play, and I'm just like in awe of how much they can hear, But yeah, at times I would try to challenge myself with really taking, melodies like Donna Lee, like Donna Lee's usually in A flat. Right, well, taking that around the cycle of fourths, and I'd have to go really. mistakes, caught myself, but you're using your ears and you're saying that's not right, and you fish for it till you, I've done that. It's been a while, but I've done that through the keys before. But I have, at the time when I first started, I would get, let's go. I'd have to, I couldn't hear that, so I'd think, oh, I know in my head now that's a little enclosure, going to surround the note. That's what that means. So approach that, and then I'm going to go up a certain chord, a minor 11 chord from that. I used to always get hung up here, go down a perfect fifth. So forth. So I spent a lot of time doing this, and it's not like I could just do it automatically. I had to kind of give myself tricks to push my ears. When I wasn't hearing it, to figure things out. And now I can hear those. I can sing them, and I can hear it. So, is there another question, or was that it?
Do you have a favorite standard?
Favorite standard? Ooh. Favorite standard. Jazz standard or
I think that's what the
oh, okay, or like a American Songbook standard. No. Wow. I have a few. I don't know if I don't think I can say one. I really love this tune, This Nearly Was Mine. It's by Richard Rodgers. It goes, I can play it for you. South Pacific, yeah. Yeah.
Played that in high school.
Yeah. Oh, see, well,
That show.
Paul did it in high school, so I don't have to. Wow, sorry, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't, wow. Oh, yeah, I learned that when I was 12. It's cool. I love that tune. Jazz standards, I always love the tune Peace by Horace Silver. It's a 10-bar tune, but it's just it's a ballad. Isfahan is a great one by Billy Strayhorn. I play that with my own band sometimes. My Shining Hour I always love playing. I did a big band arrangement of it because I liked it so much. But Peace, I can, yeah, it's... It's just so calming, and just love the harmony. There's so much in those 10 bars, so much beautiful. I love this. That descending minor chords is what that is, but just the. Right? I guess. That's where I guess our ear wants us to go. Or E minor, F minor. But he went. He goes down, slips down to think I just realized now. I love. Oftentimes in my tunes, I'll do that half step movement as a resolution. And I think I know now. Now I realize where I stole it from. But yeah, I mean, standards. So many. It's funny. A drummer friend of mine asked me to come over to his house like last week, I think, and just recorded the tune duo together, and we played Eternal Triangle. It's a really fun melody, Sonny Stitt tune. Yeah, I love this other tune. The Best Thing for You Is Me. It's a great one. It's an Irving Berlin tune. Yeah, tons of them. So many. So I can't really say just one, but I was thinking of another tune. I'll have to get back. Yeah.
Another question.
I'll say. One other tune I used to. Another one I used to really love. Beatrice. Beatrice by Sam Rivers, because of I think because of the harmony, and that tune is probably a huge influence on my harmony. I think in my own writing. Either minor second or whole step, sliding the chords like that. I like that sound a lot, that's a little different from the 2-5-1 thing we always hear, and so. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah. How do you create more interest in your solos when playing modal tunes, moving between very few chord changes?
This is a high school.
These are teachers.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I was like, wow, man. Sorry, no, I didn't mean to. Sorry, not to. I was like, wow, man. I was in high school. I was just trying to play a B flat. Like, no, just kidding. Sorry. Had more interest in solos when there's very few chords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Modal, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good. Well, I think it goes back to what I was talking about, like playing motifs. Like using. So I think one of the most common modal tunes we play is like Impressions or So What, right? Which is, and it's a 32-bar form, 16 bars of D minor, 8 bars of E flat minor, 8 bars of D minor again, right? I think also, at least the way I would approach it, I'm definitely trying to create melodies out of that over those things, rather than so much trying to just right away play kind of, like say licks or vocabulary, if you know what I mean, like jazz vocabulary. So, and I think one thing you can at least practice is, like, I like to give myself parameters, like say I'm only allowed to play thirds or fourths or fifths. So so that's one thing you can do to kind of help yourself get out of the kind of the constraint of only having kind of 2 chords, and so let me try. see if I can. So this tune, it's, if you don't know it, it's this sound. Sorry, I should have done it before, and then it goes to E flat minor. So right. So 1, 2, 1. So right there, this is getting a little more advanced, but I kind of superimposed like a flat 5 and resolved it. And then I don't want to go but then I went into I even played a major 7 over the minor chord, but you heard that. But so, I was kind of, that's what I played. But I heard it, and if I'm playing with my own rhythm section, they're gonna hear it, so we'll move one another. That's maybe a little further down the road. So I think maybe now you could approach it from like a Dorian concept. Play Dorian scale, which is the Dorian scale is the second mode of a major scale. So I'm gonna improvise now only with C major scale, but from D to D. That's Dorian scale, and then I'm gonna do D flat major on the E flat minor chord from E flat to E flat. That's called a Dorian scale, Dorian mode. Right, and then. Okay, so 1, and I think if you listen to Miles Davis solo on So What, he's playing that major 6th. That's what separates this from a different minor scale. That would be more like harmonic minor sound, So, but I'll just play, and I'm going to give myself the rules. I'm only allowed to play thirds, I guess. 1, 2, That was one chorus of just doing that. I'm not going to go out and perform like that live, but I practice like that to kind of free myself up to maybe start hearing more melodic ideas rather than just feeling grounded to that scale, kind of going up and down, which that can be really hard over modal tunes, right? So I will do that. I'll do one more chorus. This will be fourths now. 1, 2. So then at the very end, I started going into more other things, like I was playing in my mind, I'm thinking G7, and I've kind of played like a bebop scale idea over it. I don't want to get too into, but G7 would be the 5 of D minor. So you can kind of go into that and think of it that way. I mean, this is a little more advanced kind of stuff, but that's kind of, ultimately, I think one of the best ways to free yourself up is to become as harmonically aware with that as possible. So, and all that stuff, even though technically I did play the major 3rd over a D minor chord, but if I do it, does it sound wrong if I do? Did anybody notice that I played the major 3rd? Not really, right? Because it's kind of superimposing that sound, and it's a passing tone in the scale of the idea that I played. But I don't want to go too into that's a little, but that's kind of more, try to free yourself from the scale. I think is one of the ways I would encourage that and make melodies out of it.
Got another one here. What would you say to students who might want to travel and play music?
Practice. No, I mean, really. I mean, that's practice and say yes. That's really, I can't really, there's not a lot more to it than that, Give, practice to the point where you can't help but give people a reason to call you. You know, people can't not call you because you want to get to that point and you're playing, you know. And I always say, and also be a nice person. That's a really important part of it, you know. I'm working on that, but no, but really though, you know, I always say, like, you know, you want to play with the best person who's not a jerk. That's who you want to make music with, right? And as a professional, I mean, you've definitely seen situations where that can hurt people's chances. They could be a great player, but you know, maybe it's not a right chemistry with people or something. So I don't want to go too far into that, but certainly prepare yourself. You know, become as good a sight reader as possible. A lot of the gigs I used to do, when I was gigging all the time in New York, was, you know, I did one a few weeks ago. Somebody called me for a live stream thing, and they sent me the music ahead of time, and we didn't rehearse. I just had to walk on stage. I never played with that band before, but I had to walk on stage and nail the music, you know. And I looked at the charts at home, you know, but also spent a lot of years, you know, sight reading new music on a daily basis. And you know, I think that and you know, always keep up your fundamentals as whether you're a pianist or a drummer or a trombonist, a brass player, you know. My dad used to always say, try to be as versatile as possible, you know, because you never know. Like I said, I found myself, you know, playing with salsa singers in front of crowds of like 4,000 or 5,000 people. I never knew I was going to do that, but because of working on fundamentals, I had the tools necessary to be able to do that. So, and I got to travel because of that. So, you know, I don't, you know, I mean, there's certainly, you know, if you get to the certain level where you're ready to work, you can, you know, if you want to go play on a cruise ship or something like that, you can reach out to certain companies or whatever to try to audition and stuff like that. I remember one time, the second one I did, the guy called me and asked me to play for him over the phone. Yeah, this was like, and this was before cell phones, so I just put it on my bed and was like, aim my trombone at the phone, you know. It's like, yeah, man, you got a fresh sound. I'm like, no, I don't. No, like, but that was literally the audition. I was like, oh, okay, you know. There was no Zoom. There was no, but yeah. I mean, certainly, you know, yeah. So many opportunities. You know, I don't know if I ever would have been anywhere. I wouldn't have met my wife if it weren't for music and traveling and playing. You know, so. But I oftentimes people will ask, like, oh, what can you say business-wise to people? How do I get into blah, 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 blah? And I just like, man, practice. That's really the main thing. Practice, you know? It's not like, you know, now we've become this world, I don't want to, you know, I do it some too because it's kind of necessary now, but I see a lot of young students think by posting videos of themselves playing all the time, and they always say, oh, I'm practicing this today. You're not. No, you're not. You're making a video. You're not trying to play it wrong and miss notes. You're not practicing now. You're making a video that you're you know. And I don't know. Maybe I'm out of touch with it, but maybe I don't know business-wise how that's gonna. I don't know. I mean, obviously you can share what you're doing, you know. And I do it. Obviously, I say, oh, we're playing tonight. I do it to try to promote things, promote my records or whatever, and that's a great thing. But I don't know. It's interesting how we're changing as a world into this mindset or whatever. And I don't know what the right answer is or the right approach to all those things. But you know, I don't know if bands that are going to tour and travel are scouring Facebook or Instagram looking for your. Oh, that's the guy. You know, like there it is. Let me give him some fire. Let me put some fire there. Okay, we're good. And the hands, what's that? What do you call that? I don't even know, man. I'm sorry. Yeah. What's it called?
Let me slide it to the DMs to send him a direct message.
Oh, yeah. There you go. But yeah, so practice, say yes, be nice. Yeah.
One more question, maybe?
Sure. Yeah.
This is a trombone related one.
Uh-oh.
How do you practice fast playing, and do you use doodle or double tongue or both?
Ooh. Oh, man. Well, I'm just about out of time, so no, I'm just kidding. No. So I use when I'm improvising, playing fast stuff, I use kind of what I would say is like a version of doodle tonguing. I always tell people I don't like that term. because I think that syllable doodle kind of closes off your throat in the sound. And so when I was younger, there was a teacher who said, he said to me, it was a guitar teacher, guy Bob Ferrazza, I took a lesson with in high school, and he said, what are the elements of music? And I was like, melody, harmony, and he's like, rhythm and sound. He's like, and you could play all the coolest harmonic stuff in the world, but if there's not a sound behind it, it doesn't matter. So that always kind of stuck in my head, and when I'm working on this kind of tonguing, I'm always trying to search for getting as much sound and clarity to it as possible. So one of my teachers when I was younger, Mark Burdett was his name. He was in the Air Force band that my dad conducted, and he taught me the syllable duddle, luddle, 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 la. I'm not sure if the people at home can see the board back here, but this was left over from the trombone masterclass here a couple days ago. And so I wrote it up there, duddle, luddle, la, duddle, luddle, la, duddle, luddle, 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 la. That's what I used to practice every day, and I'd like just driving, walking around, duddle, luddle, la, duddle, luddle, la, duddle, luddle, 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 la, just to try to train your tongue to do that. And that was the basis of what I learned then. Duddle, luddle, la, duddle, luddle, la, duddle, luddle, 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 la, duddle, luddle, la, duddle, luddle, la, duddle, luddle, 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 la, duddle, la, duddle, luddle, la, duddle, luddle, la. And then I would just start practicing little. Simple things like that, just to try to get it working. And one of the things I really appreciate about the approach that my teacher back then taught me, he just had me learn these basic syllables and then said, okay, now take those and try to play these bebop heads with it. And I think it's a very individual path for everybody, because I think I think different syllables work for everybody. And what I mean by that is like some doodle, oodle, oodle might work for some people. Dawdle, luddle, 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 luddle might work for some people. Daddle, addle, addle. Like I know Conrad Herwig, that's what he says. Daddle, addle, 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 addle. What happened to me, what I realized over the years of practicing and trying to search for the sound I want, I think what I really say is, like dutter, because I think I just wanted a little bit more clarity on my attack, and so I think that's how it developed over the years. And I work on it most days when I'm at home. I like to play standards really fast with a metronome, and I just try to I always, I don't think of gym as like, I don't think of the music like going to the gym, but sometimes these kind of exercises I think like, okay, or running, like, okay, I'm gonna try to push the speed today. I'm gonna get to a 9-minute mile or whatever. And I think the same way when practicing this kind of stuff. But so that's basically the syllables that I use now. And you can practice that with like Arbin's book, or like the double tongue studies in the Arbin's book, or I used to play Clark studies, the trumpet studies. Things like that, scales, transcriptions. The Omni book is great for working on that. So that's that. But I do double tongue, but not when I'm improvising. If I'm playing classical stuff, and when I got here today, I was double tonguing a little bit in my routine every day. But I can't personally. I can't get my double tongue smooth enough where I feel like it locks in swings, like in terms of jazz stuff. Like if I double tongue, that's gonna. No, it doesn't work. But that said, there in context that works fine for me in classical kind of stuff, So So I do both, but not you know, not when I'm. But yeah, improvising. I use this and yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah.
That's well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and for you guys for being here in person.
I spent
And make sure you tune in tonight at 7 o'clock.
right?
Yeah, and hear all the big bands. Yeah, I was blown away. We rehearsed the day before yesterday, and yeah, I have, because of the pandemic, I haven't been able to be around a big band, and especially haven't played my own big band charts with people in over a year, and these guys are doing. Maybe the last time was with you guys at TMEA last year, possibly. So no, the students sound. I don't even like saying students; they sound so good. The musicians in the band sound so great. So please tune in and check out all the groups. Starts at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Yeah, 7 p.m. So yeah, we'll see you there. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Perfect.
Try not to get too.
Tell them how you work your way through. That's what they're always interested in. At our clinics, they always ask questions. Well, how did you learn to do this, or how did you become this? That was awesome.
Yeah, you covered. There's a couple other questions that were related to your, but I think you covered that at the beginning. So.
Oh, okay.